So before we can texture anything, for a video game, we first need to unwrap it. Now, unwrapping involves basically using sort of a virtual pair of scissors to run cuts around a 3D object so that it can be mathematically sort of unfolded into 2 dimensions. I'll just give a quick demonstration of the concept here, right? So if I move that face up like that, you can sort of imagine I've used digital scissors to like chop this edge off. And now I want to use again, my sort of digital scissors to chop this edge off like this. And then we sort of repeat the process in the most logical manner that makes sense. And we're now left with this shape, which would then sort of, if you think about it, fold and come around to sort of something like this. If you were disassembling like a cardboard box in the real world, for instance, this is what you would do. You would get a shape roughly like this, right? So this is essentially like a demonstration of what an unwrap is. But how do we actually make an unwrap, right? So let's say we've got our object here. I'm just going to right click up here so that my area option shows up, and I can split this vertically. And then I'm going to click up here and go to UV editor. You could probably do the same by clicking UV editing up here, but I'm just going to do it that way. This is how I do it. Now we can see that the default cube already comes pre-unwrapped, but I'm just going to scale this down to nothing to sort of delete the unwrap, right? So that it's not there. And what we want to do is, in the same way that we kind of imagined, well, I want to use my sort of digital scissors to chop this edge open, we use what's called a seam. So if I press Control E and go down to mark seam, that's going to sort of mark this as being snipped, I guess, so that this piece could unfold out. If I select everything and hit U followed by unwrap, we'll see that that edge has folded out here, this top edge, but the rest of the object is just sort of smushed in on itself because there's not enough seams to give this like a proper unfold representation. And so we just sort of repeat the process, right? Like if I can imagine I want this side to fold up and I want these sides to fold out, well, I would need to run another set of seams here. All right, so mark seams, and I'll select everything, hit U, and click unwrap, and we can see that now it's starting to unfold. I have this top primary face and this secondary face, but I've still got a bunch of junk down here. And we just repeat the process. Mark seam, select everything, U, unwrap. And that turns out on a cube is enough to unwrap it mathematically correctly, right? Because once this side comes out, this side and this side, the only remaining faces are here and here, and these are just sort of connected like in a big line. The process for something like a cylinder is quite similar. Again, we have our default unwrap there, so I'm just going to scale it to nothing. What we sort of want to do is say, well, we want to sort of open up this cylinder, I guess, by selecting the top cap. And if we hit mark seam, we're going to say, we're going to slice the top cap completely off, right? If I select everything, U, click, here's our unwrap. Now, again, our top cylinder looks good, but everything else looks bad, right? Because it's all kind of smushed together. So to fix this, we would also need to take the bottom cap off. So mark seam on that one, try again. These two seams are looking good. And it's starting to become unraveled, but it's not quite there yet, The last thing we need would be to run a snip around this sort of spine so that it gives it enough like breathing room to unfold. Cool. And now we have our cylinder like fully unwrapped. So the process for unwrapping all the different sort of shapes, like you kind of will get a feeling for it, but this is just like the raw button clicking, button pressing approach to just unwrapping shapes in Blender to prep them for texturing.